Lassie, Come Home, an adaptation of Eric Knight's classic story by Susan Hill. Lassie, you've come home! Joe threw his arms around the sable collie. Never had a boy and a dog loved each other more. But Lassie belonged to the Duke of Redling now. When the coal mine shut down and Father was out of work, Father had no choice but to sell her. Yet Lassie had run back to Joe again to meet him after school the way she always did. We must keep her. Now she's come home again, Joe said to Mother and Father. Not once, but twice she's gotten away from Mr. Hines. Hines was the Duke's kennelman. He didn't have a tender touch for any dog. Mother spoke sharply. We can't afford to feed ourselves, let alone a dog. There's no work coming, hard as Father tries. We could hide her, Joe said, and the Duke would never know. Father shook his head. When a fellow doesn't have much, Joe, he said, honesty's about all he does have. Joe went with Father to return Lassie to the Duke's kennel. The Duke's granddaughter, Priscilla, was there. Joe couldn't bear for anyone to see him cry. He squeezed his eyes shut and said to Lassie, Stay, girl, and never, never come home to us. We don't want you any more. His voice was loud and gruff to wall up the tears behind his words. In the next days, Joe hoped Lassie would escape once more and meet him after school as she always had done. But Lassie did not come. The Duke took the dog to the place in Scotland, Father said, 400 miles hard by the road, and who knows how many more miles for a dog to make her way. Father briefly clasped Joe's shoulder. It's a long way, Joe, he said. Joe thought of the wild miles that separated him from Lassie, the moors and the wide rivers and lochs. Then it's true, he said. Lassie will never come home again. In the Highlands of Scotland, Lassie knew the chain around her neck, the iron bars of her cage, the howling of the wind, and she knew each day, around the time her food was set before her, that she belonged someplace else. Priscilla remembered the boy who had hidden his tears and gruffly bid the dog stay. Was he why the dog whimpered so and pulled at the chain that bound her? One day, Lassie slipped from Mr. Hines' grasp. Priscilla saw the dog bounding toward her. She opened the gate. Lassie ran through and away, never slowing, never looking back. Goodbye, Lassie, Priscilla said softly, and good luck. It would be a long road for a dog with no guide. Lassie bounded south over heather and moor, path and plodland, across river and stream, brook and brae, and loch. She met foe and friend. She always kept to the way ahead, so passed the miles, days, months, and seasons, until at last came the village. The street and the schoolyard, the gate and the boy. Joe saw the dog lying by the gate. She could not lift her head. She could not wag her tail. But she whined weakly, happily, when Joe took up Lassie in his arms. Joe ran like thunder down the road to the cottage. "Mother! Lassie's come home! She's come home!" Many days passed. Joe didn't know whether Lassie would live or die. Then came the day Lassie thumped her tail on the floor where she lay, and then came the day she rose to her feet to lap from a bowl of milk. And then came another day when the Duke of Ruling arrived to take back what he had paid for in shillings and pounds. But the Duke surprised them all. "I couldn't take that dog," said the Duke. "Not when I saw the scarred pads of her feet. I thought of the miles she'd traveled from Scotland to Yorkshire, 1,000 miles for a dog across the country, all to get home to her boy." "Then you let Joe keep her?" Priscilla asked. "Nonsense. I hired the boy's father." "A fine kennelman," he said, "and with the boy and his kin, I gained the dog." This is Lassie Come Home.